Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a part of human history that's a little unsettling. Imagine standing on the edge of a primeval forest, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The stars above are impossibly bright, but the shadows around you feel even deeper, hiding things you can't quite name. There's no weather app on your phone to tell you if that rumbling in the distance is just thunder or something far more ominous. You're utterly dependent on the whims of nature, on forces you can't see or understand. When the hunt fails, when the river floods, when sickness sweeps through your small tribe, you need answers and more than answers. You need a way to influence these powerful, unseen entities. You need to give them something, something valuable, something that hurts to give up. And sometimes that something was the ultimate gift. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're there, aren't you? Standing with our earliest ancestors, long before cities, long before writing, perhaps even before settled agriculture. Life is a brutal, relentless struggle. Every sunrise is a blessing, every storm a potential catastrophe. You live at the mercy of the elements, the wild animals, and the mysterious forces that govern the world. When the game disappears, when the rains don't come, when a loved one falls ill and wastes away, there's no science, no medicine, no logical explanation. The world is alive with spirits, spirits of the forest, the river, the sky, the ancestors. And these spirits, you believe, are powerful. They can grant blessings, or they can unleash curses. The victims of human sacrifice in Mesoamerica were often war captives, seen as valuable offerings because they represented the power of the conquering state and the defeat of its enemies. But sometimes members of the community, even children, were chosen. Child sacrifice, while less common than adult sacrifice, did occur, particularly among the Aztecs, who sometimes offered children to Tlaloc, the rain god, believing their tears would bring rain. This chilling practice highlights the desperation and profound belief that drove these rituals. So, what do you do when you need something from these unseen powers? What do you do when you want to appease their anger or express your gratitude for a bountiful harvest? You give them something. You offer a portion of your hard-won hunt, the first fruits of your meager crops, a finely crafted tool, or perhaps even a precious ornament. This act of giving, of sacrificing something of value, is as old as humanity itself. It's a primal impulse, a deep-seated belief that by giving up something you cherish, you can influence the cosmic balance. It's like when you reluctantly give up that last slice of pizza to your friend, secretly hoping they'll owe you a favor later. You hear the cries of children, perhaps drugged or intoxicated to lessen their fear. As they are led to mountain peaks or sacred caves, their innocence, their purity, was believed to make their sacrifice particularly potent, a powerful plea to the gods for life-giving rain in times of drought. It's a truly disturbing thought, the idea that the most vulnerable were sometimes seen as the most valuable offering. Imagine the scene: a small fire crackles under a vast, star-filled sky. The shaman, or the tribal elder, stands before the flickering flames, their face painted with ochre, their eyes distant. They hold aloft a freshly killed animal, perhaps a deer, its warmth still lingering. The animal is not just food, it is a conduit, a messenger, a gift to the spirits. Its blood, its essence, is offered back to the earth, to the sky, to the powers that sustain life. This isn't just a meal, it's a sacred transaction, a desperate plea, a hopeful prayer. The role of the priests in these societies was immense. They were not just religious leaders, they were astronomers, mathematicians, and the custodians of sacred knowledge. They understood the intricate calendrical cycles, the demands of the gods, and the precise rituals required for sacrifice. Their power was derived from their ability to mediate between the human and divine realms, to ensure the cosmic order was maintained through these vital offerings. This concept of sacrifice, in its most basic form, is almost universal across early human societies. It's a common historical fact that nearly every ancient culture, regardless of geographical location or level of development, practiced some form of ritualistic offering to deities, spirits, or ancestral figures. From the earliest hunter-gatherers leaving offerings at sacred sites to the complex agricultural societies performing elaborate ceremonies. The act of giving something up to gain something greater was a fundamental aspect of their worldview. The philosophical underpinnings of Mesoamerican sacrifice are complex. It wasn't simply about fear, but about a deep sense of reciprocity with the divine. The gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world and humanity, and so humanity, in turn, had a sacred duty to offer back its most precious commodity, life, to sustain the gods and the cosmos. It was a cosmic contract, a sacred debt that had to be repaid. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail, did you know that some of the earliest archaeological evidence of ritualistic animal sacrifice dates back tens of thousands of years, long before the rise of complex civilizations? In places like the Blombos Cave in South Africa, researchers have found evidence of early humans intentionally depositing animal remains in ways that suggest ritualistic behavior, not just casual disposal. These aren't just dinner scraps, they're carefully placed bones, sometimes with ochre markings, indicating a deeper symbolic purpose. It's like finding a perfectly arranged set of takeout containers in your bin, but realizing it's actually a spiritual offering to the recycling gods. Historians still debate the extent to which the Spanish conquistadors, upon their arrival, exaggerated the scale and brutality of Aztec human sacrifice to justify their conquest and colonization. While archaeological evidence confirms the practice, the narratives of the conquistadors, often driven by a desire to demonize indigenous cultures, may have inflated the numbers and sensationalized the details. The challenge lies in sifting through biased accounts to reconstruct a more accurate picture. Historians and anthropologists still debate the precise motivations behind these earliest forms of sacrifice. Was it primarily an act of appeasement, a way to calm angry gods or spirits? Was it an expression of gratitude for blessings received? Or was it a more pragmatic attempt at reciprocity, a cosmic bargain where I give you this, so you give me that? The truth is likely a complex blend of all these, evolving as human societies and their understandings of the divine became more sophisticated. As you conclude this journey into Mesoamerica's heartbeat rituals, you realize the profound difference in worldview. Here, human sacrifice was not a hidden shame or a rare, desperate act, but a central, often public, and deeply meaningful religious practice. It was a terrifying, yet vital part of their cosmic understanding, a way to ensure the sun would rise, the rain would fall, and life itself would continue. The disturbing truth of these ancient offerings is that, for these civilizations, they were not acts of barbarism, but acts of profound piety, a sacred duty to nourish the gods and the cosmos. The journey continues, and the unsettling truth will only deepen as we explore other civilizations. As human societies grew, so did the complexity of their sacrificial rites. With the advent of agriculture, the stakes became higher. A failed harvest could mean starvation for an entire community. The sun, the rain, the fertility of the earth, these were now paramount concerns? And what do you give when you need something so vital, something so fundamental to your survival? You give something incredibly precious. You've witnessed the vibrant, yet disturbing heartbeat rituals of Mesoamerica, where sacrifice was a cosmic duty. Now, as you journey far from the sun-drenched pyramids and bustling markets, you find yourself in a colder, wetter landscape, shrouded in mist and ancient forests. You are stepping into the Iron Age of Northern Europe, a world of tribal societies, mysterious rituals, and chillingly preserved secrets. Here, the earth itself became a sacred vault, holding the disturbing truths of offerings made to the gods of the bog and the sky. You stand in a nascent agricultural settlement, perhaps along the banks of a great river. The fields stretch out, green and promising, but a drought looms, or a pestilence threatens. The community gathers, their faces etched with anxiety. The shaman or priest, now a more formalized figure, and prepares for a more significant offering. It might be the fattest sheep, the most prized bull, or a rare and beautiful bird. The ritual is more elaborate, the prayers more fervent, the hope more desperate. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat, but it's not for consumption, it's for the gods, for the unseen forces that hold life and death in their hands. Imagine standing on the edge of a vast, desolate bog, the ground spongy beneath your feet. the air damp and smelling of peat and decay. The silence is profound, broken only by the cry of a distant bird or the whisper of the wind through the reeds. For the ancient peoples of what is now Denmark, Germany, Ireland, and the UK, these bogs were not just wetlands, they were liminal spaces, thresholds between worlds, places where the veil between the living and the divine was incredibly thin. And it was here, in these murky, oxygen-deprived depths, that some of their most unsettling offerings were made. The transition from offering animals or crops to offering human lives is a disturbing yet recurring theme in human history. It wasn't a sudden leap, but often a gradual, horrifying escalation of the concept of the ultimate gift. If the gods demanded the best, and if human life was considered the most precious thing, then perhaps, in times of extreme crisis or profound gratitude, a human life was seen as the only offering truly worthy of the divine. It's a grim logic, but one that made a terrifying kind of sense in a world where the gods were believed to be literal arbiters of destiny. You see the faint outline of figures, perhaps a small group of tribal elders or priests, their faces grim, their movements deliberate. They are performing a ritual, not on a grand pyramid, but in the quiet solitude of the bog. The offerings they bring are not always grand animals or war captives. Sometimes they are human beings, laid to rest in the acidic waters, preserved for millennia as chilling testaments to a profound, desperate faith. It's like finding a perfectly preserved ancient snack in your fridge, but instead of chips, it's a person, and it's definitely not for eating. Imagine the psychological landscape of such a decision. The fear must have been immense, the desperation profound. To choose one of your own, a member of your community, to be offered to the gods, it speaks to a level of conviction and terror that is almost impossible for us to fully grasp today. This wasn't done lightly, it was often a last resort, a desperate gamble to avert catastrophe or secure unimaginable blessings. A common historical fact is the discovery of bog bodies across northern Europe. Remarkably preserved human remains found in peat bogs, often exhibiting signs of violent death consistent with ritualistic sacrifice. These bodies, like Toland man or Grobal man, provide direct, haunting evidence of human sacrifice in Iron Age societies, offering a grim window into their beliefs and practices. The unique anaerobic conditions of the bogs prevented decomposition, turning these individuals into archaeological time capsules. You might hear the rhythmic chanting, the mournful wails, as the chosen individual is prepared. They might be a captive from a rival tribe, a slave, a criminal, or, in the most chilling instances, a beloved child or a revered member of the community. The act itself was often imbued with profound ritualistic significance, designed to elevate the offering from mere killing to a sacred, transformative act. The blood, the breath, the very life force, was believed to be released and absorbed by the divine. You hear the squelch of mud, the rustle of reeds, as the chosen individual is led to their final resting place. They might be bound, perhaps with a noose around their neck, or have their throat cut. Sometimes, they show signs of multiple forms of violence: strangulation, stabbing, head trauma, suggesting a complex, multi-stage ritual. Their bodies might be carefully placed in the bog, sometimes weighted down with stones or branches, ensuring they remained submerged. This wasn't a casual disposal, it was a deliberate, sacred act, designed to deliver the offering directly to the deities of the underworld or the bog itself. The motivations for human sacrifice were varied, but often revolved around similar themes as animal sacrifice, just amplified. Appeasement of angry deities during natural disasters like floods, droughts, or volcanic eruptions. Gratitude for a successful harvest or victory in battle. The consecration of new buildings or leaders, imbuing them with divine power. The regeneration of the cosmos, ensuring the sun would rise again or the seasons would continue. Or even as a means of social cohesion, a terrifying demonstration of communal obedience to divine will, binding the community together through a shared, horrific act. The motivations behind these bog sacrifices were varied, but often revolved around appeasement and fertility. Imagine a harsh winter, a failed harvest, or a devastating cattle plague. The gods of the earth, the sky, the fertility of the land were believed to be displeased, demanding a profound offering to restore balance. A human life, particularly one carefully chosen, was seen as the ultimate gift, a desperate plea for divine intervention to ensure the survival and prosperity of the tribe. It's like offering your entire life savings to a vending machine that's stuck, just to get that last candy bar. Consider the chilling logic: if a small offering brings a small blessing, then a huge offering must bring a huge blessing. And what could be a bigger offering than a human life? This wasn't necessarily about cruelty for cruelty's sake, but about a desperate attempt to exert control over an uncontrollable world, to bargain with powers beyond comprehension. It's like if your phone battery is at 1%, and you're willing to give up your last snack just to make sure it doesn't die before you send that one important text. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that some bog bodies, like the white girl from the Netherlands, were found to have had half of their head shaved before being placed in the bog, and were also wearing a wool cloak? This suggests specific ritualistic preparations and adornments, indicating that these individuals were not simply murdered, but were participants in a highly symbolic and ceremonial act, even if unwillingly. It highlights the meticulous nature of these ancient rites, where every detail held meaning. It's like a very specific, ancient dress code for your final unsettling performance. You feel the tension in the air, the collective breath held. The chosen individual might be led to a sacred altar, a high peak, or a hidden cave. The instruments might be simple: a sharp stone blade, a rope, a ceremonial club. The act itself was often swift, brutal, and deeply symbolic. The silence that followed, broken only by the wind or the distant cries of animals, must have been deafening, filled with a mixture of terror, relief, and profound awe. Historians and archaeologists still debate the precise identity of the bog bodies and their role in society. Were they criminals executed for transgressions, prisoners of war, or chosen individuals who volunteered or were selected for a sacred purpose? The lack of written records from these Iron Age societies makes definitive conclusions challenging, and the debate often centers on interpreting the subtle clues left by their remains and associated artifacts. The archaeological record, though often grim, provides tantalizing clues to these ancient practices. Burials with evidence of ritualistic violence, skeletal remains showing signs of specific sacrificial methods, and artistic depictions on pottery or temple walls all point to the disturbing truth that human sacrifice was a very real, albeit often rare, part of many ancient cultures. These aren't just abstract concepts, they are the unsettling echoes of real lives offered up to unseen powers. The act of placing the body in the bog itself was significant. The bog was seen as a powerful, sacred entity, a giver of life through peat for fuel, and a taker of life. It was a liminal space, a gateway to the underworld, or a direct connection to the earth deities. By offering a human life to the bog, the ancient peoples believed they were making a direct appeal to these powerful forces, hoping to secure their favor for bountiful harvests, healthy livestock, or protection from disease. Historians still debate the precise frequency and scale of human sacrifice in various ancient cultures. While some accounts, particularly from conquering civilizations, might have exaggerated the numbers to demonize their enemies, archaeological evidence confirms that it was a practiced ritual in many societies. The challenge lies in distinguishing between isolated acts of violence and institutionalized, recurring sacrificial rites. You feel the cold seeping into your bones, the dampness clinging to your clothes as you imagine the final moments of these individuals. The sacrifice was not just about death, it was about the transference of life force, the essence of the human, into the sacred landscape. The bog town in turn would hold these offerings, a silent witness to the desperate hopes and fears of ancient communities. As you conclude this first glimpse into the disturbing truth about sacrificial rites, you realize that the roots of this practice run deep, intertwined with humanity's earliest attempts to understand and influence the world around them. It speaks to a primal fear, a desperate hope, and a chilling logic that, while alien to our modern sensibilities, made a terrifying kind of sense in a world ruled by the unseen. The journey has just begun, and the shadows of these ancient offerings will continue to follow us as we delve deeper into the specific practices of civilizations yet to come. The Iron Age in Northern Europe was a time of significant social and technological development, but it was also a period where the spiritual world remained deeply intertwined with daily life. The gods were immanent, present in the landscape, and their demands were felt acutely. The bog bodies serve as a stark reminder of the profound belief systems that shaped these societies, where the ultimate price was sometimes paid to maintain cosmic harmony. You felt the primal chill of early human sacrifice, the desperate impulse to offer something precious to the unseen. Now, as you drift forward in time, the scattered tribes coalesce into something grander, more complex, the first great civilizations. You find yourself in the fertile crescents of Mesopotamia and the sun-drenched lands of ancient Egypt, where the stakes of existence were higher, the gods more demanding, and the cost of appeasement sometimes disturbingly steep. Consider the contrast with the grand temples and public spectacles of Mesoamerica, or the formalized animal sacrifices of Greece and Rome. Here, in the northern wilds, the rituals were often more intimate, more shrouded in the mist and mystery of the landscape itself. The bog became the altar, the elements, the witnesses, and the offering a chillingly preserved secret. Imagine standing amidst the towering ziggurats of Sumer, the world's first cities, built of sun-baked brick, reaching towards a sky filled with a pantheon of powerful, often capricious, deities. Life here is governed by the mighty Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Their floods bring life-giving silt, but their unpredictable rages can wipe out entire harvests, entire communities. When the rivers swelled beyond their banks, or when drought withered the crops, the priests and kings, the intermediaries between man and God, would seek answers. And often, the answer pointed to a divine hunger, a need for a profound offering to restore balance. You might hear whispers of other forms of sacrifice from this era, though less directly evident than the bog bodies. Offerings of valuable artifacts, weapons, and even large quantities of gold and silver have been found in bogs and lakes, suggesting a broader practice of votive offerings to the divine. These were gifts of wealth, meant to appease or honor the gods. But the human sacrifices stand out as the most extreme and disturbing expression of this impulse. You see a procession winding its way through the crowded streets of Ur or Babylon, priests in elaborate robes, musicians playing haunting melodies, and at the center, perhaps a figure adorned for a solemn purpose. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of prayers. This isn't a casual offering, it's a meticulously planned ritual, designed to appease powerful gods like Enlil, the god of wind and storms, or Ishtar, the goddess of war and fertility. The very survival of the city, the prosperity of its people, was believed to hinge on the success of these rites. The enduring legacy of the bog bodies is their ability to connect us directly to the past, to the raw, visceral reality of ancient beliefs. They are not just bones, they are silent witnesses, their faces sometimes eerily preserved, inviting us to ponder the desperation, the faith, and the chilling logic that led to their ultimate sacrifice. They challenge our modern sensibilities, forcing us to confront a worldview where human life could be offered as a sacred gift. Imagine the sheer scale of the undertaking building these colossal pyramids, then offering human lives to imbue them with sacred energy. It speaks to a profound belief system, one where the boundaries between the human, natural, and divine worlds were incredibly fluid. Every act, every offering had cosmic significance, and the ultimate sacrifice was seen as the highest form of devotion. Historians still debate the specific cultural context and meanings of each individual bog body discovery. While general patterns of ritualistic violence and placement are observed, the unique details of each body, their age, gender, social status, and the specific injuries they sustained, offer tantalizing clues that require careful interpretation, ensuring that each body tells its own unique, unsettling story. A common historical fact is that while large-scale, institutionalized human sacrifice was less prevalent in Mesopotamia compared to some other ancient cultures, there is archaeological evidence suggesting its occurrence, particularly in early dynastic periods and in specific contexts. The royal tombs of Ur, excavated by Leonard Woolley in the 1920s, provided chilling evidence of what appeared to be ritualistic burials of attendants and soldiers accompanying their rulers into the afterlife, suggesting a form of retainer sacrifice. These individuals, often adorned with elaborate jewelry, were found alongside the royal deceased, implying a deliberate ceremonial act rather than simple burial. As you conclude this journey into the northern echoes and bog burials, you realize that the disturbing truth of sacrificial rites took on a uniquely chilling form in these ancient European societies. The cold, preserving embrace of the bog became the final resting place for those offered to the unseen, a testament to a profound faith and a desperate hope for survival in a harsh, unpredictable world. The journey continues, and the unsettling truths will only deepen as we explore the grim purposes behind all these ancient acts of giving. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail, did you know that in some Mesopotamian texts, there are references to a practice called kispum, which involved offerings to the spirits of the dead, particularly ancestors, to ensure their benevolence? While kispum primarily involved food and drink, some scholars suggest that in very early periods or in times of extreme crisis, the concept of offering something even more significant to the powerful deceased might have occasionally extended to human lives, especially in the context of royal burials. It's like leaving out milk and cookies for Santa, but realizing that if you really want that new gaming console, you might need to offer up your prized comic book collection. You've journeyed through the chilling landscapes of ancient sacrifice. From the early dynastic tombs of Mesopotamia and Egypt to the sun-drenched pyramids of Mesoamerica and the misty bogs of northern Europe. You've seen the evidence, felt the echoes of those disturbing acts. Now, as you gently drift deeper into the heart of this unsettling truth, it's time to confront the most profound question of all. Why did countless ancient cultures, separated by vast distances and millennia, feel compelled to offer the ultimate price, to shed human blood, in their desperate attempts to connect with the divine? Historians still debate the precise interpretation of the findings at the royal tombs of while the evidence strongly suggests retainer sacrifice. Some scholars argue for alternative interpretations, such as mass poisoning or a collective suicide ritual, rather than direct, forceful human sacrifice. The lack of explicit textual descriptions of large-scale human sacrifice in later Mesopotamian records also adds to the complexity of understanding the full scope of these practices. Imagine yourself standing in a vast, echoing void, stripped of time and place. Around you, you see glimpses of all the sacrificial scenes we've explored: the Mesopotamian priest, the Aztec warrior, the Iron Age elder. Their faces are different, their rituals unique, but the underlying impulse, the grim purpose of their giving, often shared a terrifying commonality. This wasn't about senseless violence, it was about a deeply held, often desperate belief in a cosmic exchange, a transaction with powers beyond human comprehension. It's like when you're trying to get a really stubborn stain out of your favorite shirt, and you're willing to try every single cleaning product in the house, no matter how weird, just to save it. Move across the desert sands to the lush banks of the Nile, and you enter ancient Egypt, a civilization built on the rhythms of the sun and the life-giving annual flood. Here, the pharaoh was not just a king, but a living god, a divine intermediary between humanity and the cosmos. The Egyptians, obsessed with the afterlife and the journey to eternity, developed complex funerary rituals designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful transition and the continued prosperity of Egypt. The most pervasive and perhaps easiest motivation to grasp, though no less disturbing, was appeasement and the aversion of disaster. Imagine living in a world where a sudden drought meant starvation, a relentless flood meant annihilation, or a mysterious plague could wipe out your entire family. There was no scientific explanation, no government aid. The only recourse was the divine. If the gods were angry, if the spirits were displeased, then the most precious offering, a human life, was seen as the only way to soothe their wrath. The logic was chillingly simple: if a small offering calmed a minor irritation, then the greatest offering must appease the greatest fury. You stand before a colossal pyramid, its sheer scale a testament to the power of the pharaoh and the beliefs that drove its construction. The early dynastic periods of Egypt, particularly the First Dynasty, provide unsettling evidence of human sacrifice, primarily in the form of retainer sacrifice, similar to what was found at When a pharaoh died, it was believed that their servants, courtiers, and even animals were needed to accompany them into the afterlife, ensuring their comfort and continued power in the realm of Osiris. You hear the desperate prayers for rain, the mournful wails for a loved one struck down by illness. In Mesoamerica, as we briefly touched upon, the Aztecs believed that the sun itself, Huitzilopochtli, required daily nourishment of human blood to continue its journey across the sky. Without it, the world would plunge into eternal darkness. Their sacrifices were not just appeasement, they were cosmic maintenance, a sacred duty to keep the universe running. It's like a really high-stakes ancient version of keeping your car fueled, where if you forget, the whole world stops. Imagine the scene: the pharaoh's body, meticulously prepared, is laid to rest. Around him, in adjacent chambers or pits, lie the bodies of those who were meant to serve him in eternity. These individuals, often young men and women, were not simply killed and thrown into a pit. They were buried with care, sometimes with their own possessions, suggesting a ritualistic, perhaps even voluntary, acceptance of their fate. The belief was that their lives were not ended, but transformed, continuing their service in a higher plane of existence. A common historical fact across diverse ancient cultures is that human sacrifice was frequently performed in times of extreme crisis, such as prolonged droughts, widespread famine, or devastating epidemics. These were moments of profound collective fear and desperation, when communities believed that only the ultimate offering could avert total catastrophe and restore divine favor. The purpose of these sacrifices was not appeasement of angry gods in the same way as Mesopotamia, but rather the maintenance of cosmic order and the pharaoh's divine journey. The pharaoh's success in the afterlife was directly linked to the well-being of Egypt itself. Therefore, ensuring his entourage was intact, even through the ultimate sacrifice, was seen as a necessary act for the good of the entire kingdom. It's like ensuring your boss has all their favorite snacks in the break room, but if they don't, you might have to become the snack. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that in some ancient cultures, particularly in parts of Southeast Asia, there were beliefs in foundation sacrifices where human lives were offered to consecrate new buildings, bridges, or even city walls? The idea was that the life force of the sacrificed individual would imbue the structure with strength, stability, and protection, ensuring its longevity and warding off evil spirits. It's like burying a lucky penny under your house, but instead of a penny, it's a person, and it's a lot less lucky for them. A common historical fact is that retainer sacrifice largely ceased in Egypt after the First Dynasty. While the exact reasons are debated, it's believed that symbolic representations, such as shabti figures, small figurines meant to perform labor for the deceased in the afterlife, eventually replaced actual human sacrifices. This shift suggests an evolution in religious thought, perhaps a recognition that the gods could be satisfied with symbolic offerings rather than literal lives. Historians still debate the precise relationship between environmental stress and the prevalence of human sacrifice in ancient societies. While a correlation often exists between periods of climatic upheaval and increased sacrificial activity, it's unclear whether these acts were purely reactive or if the existing religious framework simply provided a ready-made response to such crises. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that in early Egyptian funerary texts, there are spells and incantations designed to prevent the deceased from being forced to perform menial tasks in the afterlife? The Shabti figures were essentially magical stand-ins, meant to answer the call to labor when the deceased was summoned. This innovation, while seemingly mundane, might have played a role in the decline of human retainer sacrifice as a more efficient and less costly spiritual solution became available. It's like realizing you can just hire a virtual assistant instead of making your actual assistant move into your house. Beyond appeasement, there was also gratitude and thanksgiving. Imagine a bountiful harvest after a long drought, a decisive victory against a formidable enemy, or the birth of a long-awaited heir. Such blessings were seen as direct gifts from the gods, and they demanded a profound show of gratitude. While animal sacrifice was more common for this purpose, in some cultures, particularly in moments of overwhelming success, a human life might have been offered as the ultimate expression of thanks, a way to solidify the divine favor and ensure its continuation. Historians still debate the precise reasons for the abandonment of retainer sacrifice in Egypt. Was it a theological development, a growing moral unease with the practice, or simply a pragmatic decision to conserve human resources? The transition from literal sacrifice to symbolic representation is a fascinating example of how religious practices can evolve over time, adapting to changing societal values and understandings of the divine. You see the joyous celebrations of victory, the feasting and dancing, but then a solemn pause. A captive, perhaps the enemy general, is led forward, His life is offered not in anger, but in profound gratitude, a testament to the god's power and generosity. This type of sacrifice served to reinforce the divine-human contract, ensuring that the gods felt appreciated and would continue to bestow blessings. While human sacrifice in Egypt was primarily limited to retainer sacrifice in the early dynastic period, the concept of offering something precious to the gods remained central to their religious practices. Animal sacrifices, particularly of bulls and birds, were common, offered in temples to honor deities and secure their favor. The blood of the sacrifice was seen as life-giving, a potent offering that nourished the gods and maintained the cosmic order. Another powerful motivation was cosmic maintenance and renewal. For many ancient peoples, the world was not static. It was a dynamic, living entity that needed constant nourishment and attention. The sun had to rise each day. The seasons had to turn. The earth had to remain fertile. These were not guaranteed. They were gifts from the gods, gifts that required a reciprocal offering. The shedding of human blood, the release of the most potent life force, was seen as a way to feed the cosmos, to ensure its continued vitality and prevent its collapse. You see the intricate hieroglyphs on temple walls, depicting priests making offerings to various deities. The rituals are precise, ancient, and deeply meaningful. Even if human lives were no longer directly offered, the underlying principle of giving up something valuable to connect with the divine persisted. The Egyptians believed in a finely tuned cosmic balance, Mayat, and every offering, every prayer, every ritual was designed to maintain that balance. Imagine the priests, meticulously observing the stars, tracking the cycles of the sun and moon. They believed that if the cosmic order was disrupted, if the gods grew weak or hungry, chaos would ensue. Human sacrifice, therefore, was a sacred duty, a vital act of cosmic responsibility. It's like a really extreme form of preventative maintenance for the universe, where if you skip a service, everything might just shut down. The disturbing truth about these early civilizations is that the value of human life, in certain contexts, was subordinate to the perceived demands of the gods or the cosmic order. The individual was part of a larger whole, and their sacrifice, however tragic, was seen as a necessary act for the greater good of the community or the eternal journey of the divine ruler. It's a chilling reminder that morality and ethics are not static concepts, but evolve with human understanding and societal structures. Then there was consecration and foundation sacrifice. When a new temple was built, a new city founded, or a new ruler ascended to power, it was often believed that the structure or the reign needed to be imbued with divine power and protection. A human life, offered at the foundation, was seen as a way to anchor the sacred, to infuse the new endeavor with vital energy, and to protect it from malevolent forces. The sacrificed individual might become a guardian spirit, forever bound to the consecrated site. As you conclude this chapter, you realize that the foundations of civilization, built on the fertile lands of Mesopotamia and Egypt, were sometimes watered with a disturbing cost. The impulse to sacrifice, born in primal fear, found new, formalized expressions in these complex societies, reflecting their unique understandings of the divine, the afterlife, and the delicate balance of the cosmos. The shadows of these ancient offerings, though perhaps less frequent than in later cultures, serve as a stark reminder of humanity's desperate attempts to influence the unseen, even at the ultimate price. The journey continues, and the nature of these disturbing truths will only deepen as we explore other ancient worlds. You feel the cold stone of a newly laid foundation, the fresh earth disturbed. Beneath it, a chilling secret might be buried, a life offered to ensure the stability and longevity of the structure above. This practice, while less common than other forms, highlights a belief in the power of life force to sanctify and protect, a grim echo of our modern, groundbreaking ceremonies. You've witnessed the disturbing practices of the earliest civilizations, where the cost of cosmic balance sometimes demanded human life. Now, as you drift forward through the shifting sands of time, a profound transformation begins to unfold. You are entering an era where the concept of sacrifice, while still central, undergoes a radical redefinition. This is the dawn of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where the divine demands shift, and the sacred act of offering takes on new, often less bloody, but no less profound, meanings. Perhaps one of the most disturbing motivations was social cohesion and control. In societies where power was often tenuous and dissent a constant threat, human sacrifice could be a terrifyingly effective tool. The public spectacle of sacrifice served as a stark reminder of the power of the ruling elite and the gods they served. It instilled fear, enforced obedience, and bound the community together through a shared, traumatic experience. Those who might challenge the status quo or who were deemed outsiders could become convenient victims, their deaths serving as a warning to others. Imagine yourself standing on a windswept plateau, the air dry and ancient, under a sky that feels both vast and intimately close. The polytheistic pantheons of Sumer and Egypt, with their myriad gods and often unpredictable demands, begin to recede, replaced by the singular omnipotent presence of one god. This shift from many gods to one fundamentally alters the nature of sacrifice. It's no longer about appeasing a multitude of capricious deities, but about covenant, obedience, and atonement with a single, all-powerful creator. It's like moving from trying to please an entire unruly committee to simply answering to the CEO. You see the faces of the onlookers, a mixture of awe, terror, and perhaps a grim acceptance. The ritual reinforces the social hierarchy, the authority of the priests and rulers, and the absolute power of the gods. It's a chilling reminder that fear can be a powerful glue, binding people together in a shared understanding of cosmic order, even if that order demands a horrifying price. You hear the stories whispered around campfires, tales of Abraham, commanded to offer his beloved son Isaac as a sacrifice. The tension in this narrative is palpable, the ultimate test of faith, the willingness to surrender everything to divine will. But then, the dramatic intervention, the ram provided as a substitute. This pivotal story, a common historical fact in all three Abrahamic religions, establishes a powerful precedent. God desires obedience and faith more than human blood. It introduces the concept of substitutionary sacrifice, where an animal or a symbolic offering can stand in for a human life. This was a profound ethical and theological shift, moving away from the literal shedding of human blood as a primary means of appeasement. Another less common but significant motivation was divination and prophecy. In some cultures, particularly in the classical world, the entrails of sacrificed animals were examined for omens. But in more extreme cases, or in certain fringe cults, human sacrifice might have been performed with the intention of gleaning knowledge from the divine. The dying words of the victim, or the way their body reacted, might be interpreted as messages from the gods, offering insights into the future or the will of the divine. You see the smoke curling upwards from altars, but now it's the rich scent of burning animal fat, grain, or incense. In ancient Judaism, the elaborate sacrificial system outlined in the Torah was central to worship and atonement. Priests meticulously performed rituals in the tabernacle, and later the temples in Jerusalem, offering various types of sacrifices, burnt offerings for general atonement, grain offerings for gratitude, peace offerings for communion, and sin offerings for specific transgressions. Each offering, from the unblemished lamb to the finest flour, was a symbolic act of devotion, a tangible expression of repentance or thanksgiving to God. Imagine the desperate search for answers in a time of uncertainty. The oracle is silent, the omens unclear. In such moments, the ultimate sacrifice might have been seen as a way to force the gods to speak, to compel them to reveal their secrets. It's like trying to get your Wi-Fi password from a very stubborn router by hitting it with a hammer. Not recommended, but sometimes, in desperation, people try extreme measures. The purpose of these sacrifices was multifaceted. They were a means of purification, a way to cleanse oneself from ritual impurity or sin. They were acts of worship, acknowledging God's sovereignty and benevolence. And crucially, they were a means of atonement, a way to bridge the gap between a sinful humanity and a holy God. The shedding of animal blood symbolized the seriousness of sin and the cost of forgiveness. But it was always understood within the context of God's covenant with his people. It's like having a very strict but ultimately merciful landlord who accepts a security deposit instead of your firstborn child for rent. Finally, there was atonement and purification. While the Abrahamic faiths largely shifted this to animal sacrifice or spiritual acts, in some ancient contexts, human sacrifice was seen as the ultimate means of cleansing the community from sin or impurity. If a great transgression had occurred, or if the land itself was deemed polluted. the shedding of a human life, particularly an innocent one, might have been believed to purify the collective and restore divine favor. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that in ancient Israel, there was a specific ritual known as the red heifer sacrifice, which was incredibly rare and complex? The ashes of a perfectly unblemished red heifer, which had never borne a yoke, were used to create a mixture for ritual purification from corpse impurity. This wasn't about atoning for sin in the usual sense, but about cleansing ritual defilement, highlighting the intricate and sometimes baffling nuances of ancient Jewish sacrificial law. It's like having a very specific, ancient cleaning product that only works on one very particular type of spiritual stain. You feel the weight of collective guilt, the desperate need for absolution. The chosen individual becomes a scapegoat, bearing the sins of the community, their death a cleansing fire that washes away the impurities. This highlights a darker side of collective responsibility, where the burden of sin could be transferred to a single, tragic individual. Historians and theologians still debate the precise origins and evolution of the Jewish sacrificial system. Was it a gradual development from earlier Canaanite practices, or a divinely revealed system unique to Israel, while the biblical narrative presents it as divinely ordained? Archaeological evidence sometimes suggests parallels with neighboring cultures, leading to ongoing academic discussion about the interplay between religious innovation and cultural context. With the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE, the practice of animal sacrifice in Judaism largely ceased. This marked a monumental shift. The focus moved from literal blood offerings to prayer, study of the Torah, and acts of loving kindness, mitzvot. The synagogue became the new center of worship, and the individual's direct relationship with God, through prayer and ethical living, took precedence. This demonstrated a profound adaptability of faith, proving that the core principles of devotion and atonement could exist without the shedding of blood. As Christianity emerged from Judaism, it radically reinterpreted the concept of sacrifice. You hear the teachings of Jesus, who, according to Christian belief, became the ultimate and final sacrifice. His death on the cross was seen as the single, perfect atonement for the sins of humanity, rendering all previous animal sacrifices obsolete. This was a revolutionary theological concept, no more need for repeated blood offerings, because the divine had offered itself. As you conclude this exploration of the grim purposes behind ancient sacrificial rites, you realize that these acts, however horrifying to our modern sensibilities, were deeply meaningful within their own cultural contexts. They were born of fear, hope, desperation, and a profound belief in a dynamic, demanding cosmos. They were attempts to understand, to influence, and to survive in a world where the line between the natural and the supernatural was thin, and the demands of the divine were acutely felt. The unsettling truth is that for our ancestors, these were not acts of barbarism, but often acts of profound piety, a desperate bargain for survival, and a terrifying testament to the lengths humanity would go to secure its place in the universe. The journey continues. And in our next chapter, we will explore the elaborate and often chilling methods by which these ultimate gifts were delivered. You see the early Christian communities gathering, not in temples with altars, but in humble homes, breaking bread and sharing wine. The Eucharist, or communion, became the central ritual, a symbolic commemoration of Christ's sacrifice. The bread and wine are believed to be the body and blood of Christ, offered in remembrance, a spiritual rather than literal reenactment of the ultimate sacrifice. This shifted the focus from a physical act of giving to a spiritual act of remembrance and participation in a divine mystery. It's like switching from having to physically mail a letter every time you want to communicate, to simply sending an email that carries the same weight. You've delved into the profound, often terrifying, reasons why ancient cultures felt compelled to offer human lives to the divine. You've understood the grim purposes, appeasement, gratitude, cosmic maintenance, consecration, social control, divination, and atonement. Now, as you gently drift closer, the veil between understanding why and confronting how begins to thin. You are about to witness the elaborate and often chilling methods by which these ultimate gifts were delivered, the precise ritualized acts that marked the final moments of those offered to the unseen. A common historical fact in Christianity is the theological concept of Christ as the Lamb of God, directly linking Jesus' sacrifice to the Passover lamb in Jewish tradition, which was sacrificed to atone for sins and protect the Israelites. This connection emphasizes the continuity and fulfillment of earlier sacrificial themes within a new, redemptive framework. Imagine standing at the edge of a sacred precinct, the air charged with anticipation and dread. The methods of human sacrifice were rarely haphazard acts of violence. Instead, they were meticulously planned, deeply symbolic rituals, each step imbued with profound meaning, designed to ensure the offering was potent, acceptable, and effective in its cosmic transaction. The specific techniques varied wildly across cultures, reflecting their unique cosmologies, their understanding of the divine, and what they believed was the most effective way to release the vital life force. It's like how different cultures have different ways of wrapping presents. Some are simple, some are incredibly elaborate, but the goal is always to deliver the gift. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail, did you know that in early Christian art, particularly in the catacombs, symbols like the fish ichthys and the anchor were used as secret codes for Christian identity, but also the image of a lamb or a shepherd carrying a lamb was a very early and common depiction of Christ, long before the crucifix became the dominant symbol. This highlights the early emphasis on the sacrificial lamb imagery before the full theological development of the crucifixion's visual representation. It's like your favorite band having a really obscure early logo before they hit it big with their iconic one. You see the chosen individual, perhaps adorned in ceremonial garments, their body painted, their hair ritually prepared. They might be led in a solemn procession, accompanied by chanting, drumming, or the mournful sound of flutes. This journey to the altar was often part of the ritual itself, a liminal passage from the world of the living to the realm of the divine. The atmosphere would be heavy with a mixture of awe, fear, and a strange, almost hypnotic reverence. Historians and theologians still debate the precise extent to which early Christian understandings of sacrifice were influenced by existing pagan sacrificial practices versus being a purely internal development rooted in Jewish tradition. While the unique theological claims of Christ's sacrifice are central, the cultural context of the Roman world, where animal sacrifice was common, inevitably played a role in how the new faith was understood and articulated. A common historical fact is that heart extraction was a prominent and highly ritualized method of human sacrifice. Particularly among the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, the victim, often a war captive, would be led to the summit of a pyramid, laid across a convex stone altar, and held down by several priests. A high priest would then use a flint or obsidian knife to quickly open the chest cavity and remove the still beating heart, which was then offered to the sun god. Huitzilopochtli. This was believed to be the most potent offering, the very essence of life, vital for sustaining the cosmos. Finally, you move to Islam, the third great Abrahamic faith, where the concept of sacrifice is also deeply ingrained. But again, with its own distinct emphasis, you hear the story of Abraham and his son Ismail, a parallel to the Abraham-Isaac narrative, where Ibrahim is willing to sacrifice his son in obedience to Allah, but a ram is provided as a substitute. This story, central to Islam, reinforces the theme of obedience and the divine provision of an alternative offering. You hear the sharp, sickening sound of the obsidian blade, the gasp of the crowd, and then the chilling silence as the heart is held aloft. Steaming in the cool morning air, the body might then be cast down the pyramid steps, emphasizing the offering to the earth, or dismembered, with certain parts consumed in ritual feast by the elite. This wasn't just about killing, it was about a precise, ritualistic release of the life force, a direct feeding of the divine. It's like a very specific, ancient recipe for cosmic fuel, where the main ingredient is a beating heart. You see millions of Muslims around the world celebrating Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, commemorating Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son. Families slaughter an animal, a sheep, goat, cow, or camel, and divide the meat among family, friends, and the poor. This isn't about appeasing an angry God, it's an act of devotion, gratitude, and charity, a symbolic reenactment of Ibrahim's ultimate obedience. The sacrifice is a reminder of humility, submission to Allah's will, and the importance of sharing one's blessings with those less fortunate. It's like a massive global potluck, where the main dish is a symbol of profound faith and generosity. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that among the Aztecs, there was a specific method of sacrifice known as tlahuahuanalistli, or gladiatorial sacrifice? In this ritual, a captive warrior was given a mock weapon, often made of feathers, and forced to fight against fully armed Aztec warriors, sometimes tied to a stone. The captive was almost always defeated and then sacrificed, often by heart extraction. This method combined ritual combat with sacrifice, emphasizing the valor of the Aztec warriors and the power of their gods over their defeated enemies. It's like a really unfair boxing match where one fighter has a pool noodle and the other has a flamethrower, and the loser gets sacrificed to the sun. A common historical fact in Islam is that the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj, culminates with the ritual of animal sacrifice during Eid al-Adha, symbolizing the pilgrim's willingness to sacrifice anything for Allah and to follow the path of Ibrahim. Historians still debate the precise psychological impact of these public, highly theatrical sacrifices on both the victims and the onlookers. While some scholars suggest that victims might have been drugged or psychologically prepared to accept their fate, others emphasize the terror and coercion involved. Similarly, the effect on the populace could range from profound religious awe to deep-seated fear and compliance, making it difficult to generalize the emotional experience of these rituals. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that in some pre-Islamic Arabian traditions, there were practices of offering human sacrifices, often to appease specific tribal deities or to mark important events? While the details are scarce and debated, the advent of Islam, with its emphasis on the story of Ibrahim and the substitution of an animal, effectively ended any such practices, channeling the sacrificial impulse into animal offerings and acts of charity. It's like a new operating system coming out that fixes all the really dangerous bugs from the previous version. Beyond heart extraction. Decapitation was another widely practiced method across various ancient cultures. You might find evidence of this in the Maya civilization, where victims were sometimes decapitated and their heads displayed on skull racks, tzompantli as trophies and offerings to the gods. The act of severing the head, the seat of consciousness and identity, carried profound symbolic weight, signifying the complete surrender of the individual to the divine. Historians still debate the extent of human sacrifice in pre-Islamic Arabia, relying on limited archaeological and textual evidence. While some accounts suggest its presence, the exact nature, frequency, and motivations remain a subject of scholarly discussion, making it difficult to draw definitive conclusions about the scale of the practice before the advent of Islam. You see the severed head, perhaps still dripping, placed on a pole alongside others, a grim testament to the power of the gods and the ruthlessness of the rulers. In some instances, the decapitated heads might have been used in ritualistic games or ceremonies, further emphasizing their role as sacred objects rather than mere remains. The blood, again, was crucial, often collected and offered to the earth or specific deities. As you conclude this chapter, that you realize that the Abrahamic faiths, while rooted in the ancient impulse to offer sacrifice, fundamentally redefined its nature. The shift was profound from literal human blood to symbolic animal offerings, and ultimately to acts of faith, prayer, and ethical living. This transformation reflects a developing understanding of the divine, a God who desires obedience and a contrite heart more than the ultimate price of human life. The disturbing truth of ancient human sacrifice did not vanish entirely, but it was recontextualized, channeled into new forms that emphasized spiritual devotion and communal responsibility. The journey continues, and the shadows of these ancient practices will continue to evolve as we explore other civilizations. In the bogs of northern Europe, and as we discussed, strangulation and drowning were common methods. You feel the cold, murky water, the tightening of a rope around a neck. The bog bodies, often found with evidence of garroting or ropes still around their throats, suggest a deliberate, controlled act of suffocation, sometimes combined with other forms of violence. The act of placing the body in the bog, weighing it down, ensured its submersion and preservation, a direct offering to the earth deities or the spirits of the bog itself. You've witnessed the profound redefinition of sacrifice within the Abrahamic faiths. a shift from literal human blood to symbolic offerings and acts of devotion. Now, as you gently drift westward, leaving the arid plateaus and bustling markets of the Near East, you find yourself bathed in the golden light of the classical world. You are stepping into ancient Greece and Rome, civilizations renowned for their philosophy, democracy, and engineering, but also for their complex, sometimes hidden, and often disturbing sacrificial rites. Imagine the quiet terror in the damp, misty landscape, far from the public gaze of a pyramid. The sacrifice here was often more intimate, more solitary, a chilling communion between the victim, the officiants, and the powerful, silent bog. The water, a liminal element, served as the gateway to the underworld, absorbing the life force and delivering it to the chthonic powers. Imagine standing on the Acropolis in Athens, the Parthenon gleaming white against the azure sky. The air is filled with the scent of olive trees and the murmur of philosophical debate. Yet, beneath this veneer of reason and intellectual pursuit, the gods of Olympus, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena demanded their due. They were powerful, temperamental, and deeply involved in human affairs. A good harvest, victory in battle, protection from plague, all depended on their favor, and their favor, more often than not, required an offering. Another method, often associated with desperate times, was burning alive. While less commonly documented as a primary method for large-scale, institutionalized sacrifice, there are historical accounts and archaeological suggestions of this practice in various cultures, particularly in times of severe crisis or as a form of extreme purification. The fire, a transformative element, was believed to cleanse and elevate the offering, sending the life force directly to the sky gods. You see a procession, perhaps during the Panathenaic festival, winding its way towards a grand altar. Priests in white robes lead a magnificent bull, garlanded with flowers, its hide gleaming in the sun. The animal is calm, almost serene, as it approaches its fate. This is not a desperate, last-ditch effort to avert disaster, but a regular, celebrated act of piety, a civic duty. Animal sacrifice was a common historical fact in both ancient Greece and Rome, deeply embedded in their religious, social, and political life. Nearly every public event, from athletic games to political assemblies, began with a sacrifice to ensure divine blessing. You feel the searing heat, the acrid smell of smoke, as the flames consume the offering. This method, while horrifying, carried a powerful symbolic weight, the complete consumption and transformation of the physical body, releasing the spirit in its purest form to the heavens. It was a dramatic, terrifying spectacle meant to impress upon both the gods and the onlookers the gravity of the offering. The purpose of these sacrifices was multifaceted. They were acts of worship, honoring the gods and acknowledging their power. They were a means of divination, where the entrails of the sacrificed animal might be examined for omens. They were communal feasts, as much of the sacrificed meat was shared among the participants, binding the community together. And they were, fundamentally, a way to maintain eusebeia, piety, ensuring the gods remained benevolent toward the city and its people. It's like a really elaborate potluck, but the main course is a direct message to the heavens, and if you mess it up, the sky might fall. In some ancient Near Eastern and Mediterranean cultures, child sacrifice was practiced, often involving immolation or burial alive. While often condemned by later Abrahamic faiths, archaeological evidence from sites like Carthage suggests the ritualistic sacrifice of infants and young children, particularly to deities like Baal Hammon and Tanit. These offerings, often found in urns within dedicated cemeteries called tophets, speak to a desperate belief in the power of innocent life to appease powerful, demanding gods. You hear the solemn chants, the sharp sound of the axe, and then the gurgle of blood as it spills onto the altar, collected in sacred vessels. The blood was considered the life force, the most potent part of the offering, meant to nourish the gods. The smoke from the burning fat and bones, rising towards the heavens, was the god's portion, a fragrant aroma pleasing to the divine senses. The rest of the meat, as mentioned, was often distributed, turning a religious rite into a communal meal, reinforcing social bonds. You hear the faint cries of infants, the solemn prayers of parents, as they offer their most precious possessions. The innocence of the child was believed to make the offering particularly potent, a pure and unblemished gift to the divine. This practice is perhaps the most disturbing of all, highlights the extreme lengths to which people would go when faced with existential threats, believing that only the ultimate sacrifice could secure divine favor. It's like giving up your favorite toy to get a good grade. But the toy is a baby, and the grade is the survival of your entire civilization. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that in ancient Greece, particularly in certain cults like that of Dionysus, there were instances of omophagia, the ritual consumption of raw flesh from a sacrificed animal? This was believed to allow the participants to absorb the raw, untamed power of the deity, entering into a state of ecstatic communion. While not human sacrifice, it highlights the extreme lengths to which some devotees would go to connect with the divine, embracing practices that might seem barbaric to modern sensibilities. It's like trying to get closer to your favorite rock star by eating a raw chicken wing they just touched. Historians still debate the precise interpretation of the Carthaginian tophets. While many scholars agree they represent evidence of child sacrifice, some alternative theories suggest they were cemeteries for children who died naturally, with the urns containing their cremated remains. However, the consistent archaeological patterns and textual references from ancient sources strongly support the ritualistic sacrifice interpretation. Historians still debate the precise theological interpretations of blood sacrifice in Greek and Roman religions. Was it primarily an act of appeasement, a form of communion, or a symbolic reenactment of primordial cosmic events? The answers often vary depending on the specific cult, deity, and historical period, reflecting the diverse and evolving nature of ancient polytheistic beliefs. The preparation of the victim was often as crucial as the method of death. Victims might be ritually purified through fasting, bathing, or special diets. They might be adorned with specific clothing, jewelry, or body paint. In some cultures, they might be drugged or intoxicated to induce a trance-like state, lessening their fear or making them more compliant. This preparation was designed to make the offering perfect, unblemished, and ritually pure, worthy of the divine. While animal sacrifice was ubiquitous, the question of human sacrifice in the classical world is more complex and often shrouded in historical ambiguity. Unlike the clear evidence from some Mesoamerican cultures or the early dynastic periods of Egypt and Mesopotamia, explicit, institutionalized human sacrifice was rare and generally condemned in later Greek and Roman society. However, whispers and hidden truths suggest that it was not entirely absent, particularly in times of extreme crisis or in certain fringe cults. You see the meticulous care taken in these preparations, a strange juxtaposition of reverence and impending horror. The victim is not just a body, they are a sacred vessel, a temporary conduit for the ultimate gift. Every adornment, every gesture, every prayer is designed to elevate the act from mere killing to a profound spiritual transaction. Imagine the Roman Forum, usually a bustling center of commerce and politics, suddenly hushed by an atmosphere of dread. A terrible plague ravages the city, or a devastating military defeat threatens the very existence of the Republic. In such desperate moments, the Romans, pragmatic and superstitious in equal measure, sometimes resorted to extreme measures. You might hear tales of the devotio, a chilling ritual where a Roman general would vow to sacrifice himself and the enemy army to the chthonic underworld gods in exchange for victory. While the general's death was voluntary, it was still a form of human offering for a desired outcome. The tools of sacrifice were often simple yet terrifyingly effective obsidian knives, flint blades, ceremonial axes, ropes, or even specialized altars designed to facilitate the ritual. These implements were often themselves sacred objects, imbued with power through their use in these profound ceremonies. They were not just instruments of death, but conduits of divine will. Historians still debate the extent to which human sacrifice was a genuine act of religious devotion versus a pragmatic tool for social control. While religious beliefs undoubtedly provided the framework, the timing and targets of sacrifices often suggest underlying political, economic, or social motivations. The challenge lies in disentangling these complex layers of intent. You feel the cold, sharp edge of a flint knife, the rough texture of a ceremonial rope. These objects, handled by priests and officiants, were the tangible connection between the human world and the divine demands. Their very presence would have instilled a profound sense of dread and awe in those witnessing the ritual. You see the general, clad in his armor, standing before the priests, uttering the solemn vows. He charges into battle, seeking death, believing that his life, offered to the underworld deities, will ensure the destruction of the enemy. This wasn't a common occurrence, but it speaks to the ultimate price some were willing to pay to secure divine favor in dire circumstances. It's like a really intense game of chess where one player decides to sacrifice their king just to win the game. Historians still debate the extent to which victims of human sacrifice were willing participants versus coerced individuals. While some accounts suggest voluntary sacrifice, particularly among high-ranking individuals or those seeking divine communion, the majority of victims were likely captives, slaves, or those from marginalized groups, suggesting coercion played a significant role. Another unsettling practice was the vir sacrum, or sacred spring, in early Roman history. In times of extreme distress, the Romans might vow to sacrifice everything born in the spring of a particular year, both animals and, chillingly, human children, to the gods. While the children were typically allowed to grow up and then sent out to found new colonies, the initial vow implied a willingness to offer them to the divine, a desperate bargain with fate. This highlights the deep-seated belief that the gods could demand the most precious of offerings when displeased. As you conclude this chilling exploration of the methods of ancient sacrifice, you realize that these acts were far more than simple killings. They were elaborate, deeply symbolic rituals, meticulously designed to achieve specific cosmic or social outcomes. Each method, from heart extraction to bog burial, reflected a unique cultural understanding of life, death, and the divine. The unsettling truth is that for our ancestors, the ultimate gift was delivered with chilling precision, a testament to their profound faith and their desperate attempts to influence the unseen. The journey continues, and in our final chapter, we will explore how these ancient sacrificial concepts subtly persist and echo in our modern world. A common historical fact is that by the later Roman Republic and Empire, public human sacrifice was officially outlawed and viewed with horror, often attributed to barbarian peoples like the Gauls or Carthaginians. However, there are scattered, often debated, accounts of isolated instances or accusations of human sacrifice, particularly in times of extreme crisis or against persecuted groups like early Christians. You've witnessed the chilling precision of ancient sacrificial rites, the grim methods by which lives were offered to the divine. You've journeyed through millennia of human desperation and profound belief. Now, as our historical exploration nears its conclusion, you might be thinking, surely such barbaric practices are long gone, relegated to the dusty pages of history books. But as you gently drift into the modern era, you'll find that the unsettling concepts behind ancient sacrifice, those primal impulses of offering and exchange, subtly persist and echo in our contemporary world, often in unexpected and disturbing ways. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail. Did you know that the Romans practiced a form of human sacrifice known as burial alive in very specific, dire circumstances? For example, in 216 BCE, during the Second Punic War, when Hannibal was devastating Italy, two pairs of Gauls and Greeks, a man and a woman from each group, were buried alive in the Forum Boarium. This was done in response to an oracle, a desperate attempt to appease the gods and avert national disaster. It was considered an extreme last resort measure, a horrifying ritual to cleanse the city of its perceived impurities and restore divine favor. It's like burying your least favorite socks in the garden to make your plants grow better. But with actual people. Imagine standing in a bustling modern city. The skyscrapers gleam, the traffic hums, and people rush by, engrossed in their digital lives. We pride ourselves on our rationality, our scientific understanding, our ethical advancements. Yet, look closer, and you'll see the lingering shadows of ancient sacrificial logic. The idea of giving something up for a greater good, of paying a price for success, of making a sacrifice for a cause. These phrases are woven into our everyday language, carrying a weight that belies their seemingly benign modern usage. It's like finding a tiny, ancient artifact in the pocket of your brand new designer jeans. It doesn't quite fit, but it's definitely there. Historians still debate the true extent and nature of human sacrifice in the Roman world. While official policy condemned it, the occasional archaeological finding or textual reference to such acts, particularly in times of extreme panic or associated with foreign cults, suggests that the practice, however rare, was not entirely absent from the Roman consciousness. The challenge lies in separating historical fact from propaganda and rumor. You see the athlete pushing their body to the absolute limit, sacrificing their youth and comfort for the glory of victory. You see the entrepreneur sacrificing sleep and personal life for the dream of building an empire. You see the soldier sacrificing their life for their country. While these are not literal human sacrifices to deities, the underlying psychological framework, the belief that extreme effort, pain, or even death is a necessary price for a desired outcome, echoes the ancient sacrificial impulse. It's a secularized, internalized form of offering, where the gods are now success, fame, or national pride. The philosophical advancements of Greece and Rome, with their emphasis on reason, ethics, and the dignity of the individual, often stood in stark contrast to the brutal reality of some sacrificial practices. Thinkers like Plato and Seneca condemned the shedding of human blood, advocating for more virtuous and symbolic forms of worship. This internal conflict within classical society reflects a growing moral unease with the ultimate sacrifice, even as the religious traditions continued to demand offerings. A common historical fact is that many modern cultural practices and metaphors, particularly those related to self-denial, extreme effort, or martyrdom, draw conceptual parallels to ancient sacrificial themes, even if unconsciously. The idea of giving your all or laying down your life for a cause resonates with the ancient understanding that the most valuable offering yields the greatest reward. You can almost feel the tension between the intellectual ideals and the ancient, primal fears. The philosophers might debate the nature of the soul, but the common person, facing famine or war, still looked to the priests and their bloody altars for salvation. The gods, for all their Olympian grandeur, still demanded a price, and sometimes that price was life itself. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail, did you know that in some contemporary extreme sports or endurance challenges, participants sometimes describe feeling a sense of transcendence or communion with something larger than themselves, almost a spiritual experience, after pushing their bodies to the brink of collapse? This intense physical and mental suffering, voluntarily undertaken, can evoke a primal sense of offering and purification, echoing the ecstatic elements found in some ancient sacrificial rites, albeit without the literal shedding of blood. It's like a really intense yoga retreat, but instead of inner peace, you're trying to achieve inner abs, and you might accidentally achieve inner organ failure. Even the gladiatorial games, while not strictly religious sacrifices, carried echoes of ancient offerings. The shedding of blood in the arena, the public spectacle of death, served a complex purpose that included honoring the dead, placating the populace, and demonstrating Roman power. While the victims were often slaves or condemned criminals, their deaths were a form of offering, a grim spectacle that resonated with deeper, more ancient sacrificial impulses. Historians and cultural theorists still debate the extent to which these modern sacrifices are genuine psychological echoes of ancient practices versus independent developments arising from universal human experiences of effort and reward. While direct causal links are hard to prove, the striking similarities in rhetoric and motivation suggest a deep, perhaps unconscious, continuity in human thinking about value and cost. As you conclude this chapter, you realize that the classical world, for all its sophistication, was not entirely free from the disturbing shadow of human sacrifice. While less overt and institutionalized than in some other cultures, the desperate impulse to offer the ultimate price to the divine, particularly in moments of profound crisis, remained a hidden truth. The shift towards animal sacrifice and symbolic offerings was a significant development, but the echoes of human blood lingered, a testament to the enduring power of primal fear and the complex demands of ancient deities. The journey continues, and the unsettling truths will only deepen as we explore other civilizations. Consider the concept of scapegoating. While we no longer literally cast out a person to bear the sins of the community, the psychological mechanism remains alive and well. When a crisis strikes, an economic downturn, a social upheaval, a public scandal, We often see a desperate search for someone to blame, an individual or group to sacrifice to restore order or alleviate collective guilt. This can manifest as public shaming, political witch hunts, or even the demonization of minority groups. You've navigated the complex, sometimes hidden, sacrificial landscapes of the classical world, where reason began to grapple with primal fear. Now, prepare yourself for a journey across vast oceans, to a continent where the sun was a living deity, the cosmos a delicate balance, and the ultimate offering was not just a desperate plea, but a sacred duty. You are stepping into ancient Mesoamerica, a world of vibrant civilizations like the Maya, the Aztec, and the Teotihuacanos, where blood truly nourished the gods and ensured the very heartbeat of the cosmos. You see the media frenzy, the public outcry, the rapid condemnation of an individual or organization? The narrative is clear: they are responsible, they must pay the price, and their downfall will somehow cleanse the collective. This isn't a blood ritual, but it is a psychological one, where a person's reputation, career, or even mental well-being is offered up to appease the angry gods of public opinion. It's like when your internet goes down, and you immediately blame the router, even though it's probably your own fault for downloading too many cat videos. Imagine standing atop a colossal pyramid, perhaps in the bustling heart of Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. The air is thinner here, the sun intense, and the sounds of a vibrant city rise around you. The chatter of market vendors, the distant thrum of drums, but your gaze is drawn to the summit of the pyramid, where priests adorned in elaborate feathered regalia. Stand ready. For these cultures, the world was alive, a dynamic interplay between divine forces that needed constant sustenance, and that sustenance, they believed, was the most precious commodity human life, offered in a meticulously choreographed, deeply symbolic ritual. The idea of paying a price for progress also echoes ancient sacrificial logic. Think of the environmental cost of industrialization, the human cost of wars fought for resources, or the ethical compromises made in scientific research. We often justify these sacrifices by arguing that they are necessary for the greater good, for the advancement of society, or for the pursuit of knowledge. This mirrors the ancient belief that a profound benefit often required an equally profound offering. You see the vivid colors of murals depicting scenes of sacrifice, the intricate carvings on stelae telling stories of cosmic creation and divine demands. Unlike the often reluctant or crisis-driven sacrifices of some old-world cultures, in Mesoamerica, human sacrifice was often a central, institutionalized aspect of religious and political life. It wasn't a hidden truth, it was a visible, integral part of their worldview, a fundamental mechanism for maintaining the delicate balance of the universe. It's like how in modern society, taxes are a central, institutionalized part of life. Nobody likes them, but everyone understands they're necessary to keep things running. You hear the debates about climate change, about ethical AI, about the impact of technology on human well-being. The questions are often framed in terms of what we are willing to give up or sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. This isn't about appeasing angry deities, but about bargaining with the future, hoping that our present-day costs will yield future benefits. A common historical fact is that the Mesoamerican civilizations, particularly the Aztecs, practiced human sacrifice on a significant scale, believing it was essential to sustain the sun and prevent the end of the world. The Aztec cosmology held that the sun, Huitzilopochtli, needed human blood, or precious water, to continue its daily journey across the sky and to ensure the survival of humanity. Without this nourishment, the sun would falter, and the cosmos would plunge into eternal darkness. The concept of ultimate sacrifice in warfare and heroism is perhaps the most direct modern echo of ancient human sacrifice. Soldiers who die in battle are often revered as heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice for their nation. Their deaths are imbued with profound meaning, serving to inspire patriotism, solidify national identity, and justify the costs of conflict. Memorials, ceremonies, and national holidays commemorate these sacrifices, creating a collective memory that reinforces the idea of life offered for a greater cause. You hear the rhythmic beat of drums, the mournful sound of conch shells, and the collective murmur of thousands gathered below. The chosen individuals, often captives from warfare, but sometimes members of the community, were led up the steep steps of the pyramid. their hearts still beating, were believed to be the most potent offering, the very essence of life, capable of feeding the hungry sun and other deities. The ritual was not just about death. It was about renewal, about ensuring the continuation of life through a profound act of giving. You see the solemn faces at a war memorial, the flags at half-mast, the respectful silence. The rhetoric surrounding these deaths often elevates them beyond mere tragedy, transforming them into acts of profound national offering. The blood shed on the battlefield, while not ritually offered to a deity, serves a similar symbolic function, a life given to sustain the collective. It's like a really sad, a really expensive team-building exercise, where the team building involves a lot of dying. The methods of sacrifice varied across cultures and purposes. For the Aztecs, the most common form was heart extraction. Imagine the scene: the victim, often held down by several priests, would have their chest opened with a flint or obsidian knife, and their still beating heart quickly removed and offered to the sun or placed in a sacred vessel. The body might then be thrown down the pyramid steps, emphasizing the offering to the earth. This wasn't a quick, discreet affair. It was a public spectacle, a powerful demonstration of religious devotion and state power. Even in our personal lives, the language of sacrifice persists. You might sacrifice a comfortable job for a passionate career, sacrifice sleep to care for a loved one, or sacrifice personal desires for the well-being of your family. These are choices, often difficult ones, that involve giving up something valued for something else deemed more important. This reflects a deep-seated human understanding that true value often comes with a cost, a willingness to surrender something of oneself. Now, for a slightly more obscure detail, did you know that the Maya, while also practicing human sacrifice, often focused on bloodletting rituals where rulers and nobles would pierce their own tongues, ears, or even genitals to offer their blood to the gods? This auto-sacrifice was seen as a way for the elite to connect directly with the divine and to legitimize their rule, demonstrating their willingness to suffer for the cosmos. While human sacrifice of others certainly occurred, the emphasis on self-sacrifice among the elite highlights a different aspect of their spiritual devotion. It's like your boss giving themselves a paper cut to show solidarity with the mailroom staff. The enduring power of these concepts lies in their ability to provide meaning and structure to difficult choices and profound losses. In a world that can often feel random and chaotic, the idea that there is a purpose, a transaction, a price for everything, can be strangely comforting. It allows us to rationalize suffering, to imbue loss with significance, and to believe that our actions, even our ultimate surrender, contribute to a larger cosmic or social order. Historians still debate the precise socio-political functions of human sacrifice in Mesoamerican societies. Was it primarily a religious imperative, a form of population control, a tool for political intimidation, or a combination of all these factors? The sheer scale of some sacrifices, particularly the dedication of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan, suggests that it served multiple purposes beyond mere religious devotion, reinforcing state power and control over conquered peoples. Historians and psychologists continue to explore the evolutionary roots of altruism and self-sacrifice, debating whether these behaviors are purely cultural constructs or if they tap into deeper, innate human predispositions. The willingness to put the group's needs above one's own, even to the point of death, has parallels with ancient sacrificial logic, suggesting a complex interplay between biology, culture, and belief. For the Maya, human sacrifice was often associated with specific ceremonies, such as the dedication of new buildings, the accession of rulers, or important calendrical events. Victims might be thrown into sacred cenotes, natural sinkholes, decapitated, or disemboweled. The blood, again, was the vital element, a sacred offering that nourished the earth and maintained the cosmic cycles. The Maya also practiced ritual ball games, where the losing team, or sometimes even the winning team, might be sacrificed, symbolizing the cosmic struggle between life and death. You realize that while the altars are gone, the blood no longer literally shed. The underlying human impulse to offer, to pay a price, to sacrifice for something greater, remains a powerful, if often unacknowledged, force in our modern lives. The shadows of ancient sacrificial rites linger, not as overt rituals, but as subtle echoes in our language, our values, and our deepest motivations. You see the intricate calendar systems of the Maya, their profound understanding of astronomy, and their belief that time itself was cyclical, prone to endings and renewals. Each cycle required a reaffirmation, a re-nourishment of the gods, to ensure the next cycle would begin. Human sacrifice was therefore not just an act of appeasement, but a critical component of cosmic maintenance, a responsibility bestowed upon humanity by the gods themselves. As you conclude this final chapter, you ponder the unsettling human enigma. Why, across millennia and cultures, have we felt compelled to offer such a disturbing price? Perhaps it speaks to our fundamental vulnerability in the face of an unpredictable world, our desperate need for control, or our profound capacity for both devotion and self-destruction. The disturbing truth about sacrificial rites in ancient cultures is not just a historical curiosity, it is a mirror reflecting a persistent, unsettling aspect of the human condition that continues to resonate. Even in our seemingly enlightened age, you have come a long way, from ancient rituals to modern echoes of sacrifice. As the last images fade from your mind, allow yourself to feel the peace of this moment. No more bloody altars or desperate prayers, just the silence of the night. Let these stories fade like a dream, leaving you with a sense of curiosity and a little mystery about the things that people once did, and perhaps still do in other ways. This world, no matter how much we understand, will always have hidden corners that are unexplored, hidden corners that reason cannot reach. And perhaps it is in those gaps that wonder and fear continue to exist, inviting us to dream and ponder. Take a deep breath, feel the warmth of the blanket, and know that you are safe in your world. Every mystery has its time to rest. The Teotihuacanos, builders of the massive city of Teotihuacan, preceding the Aztecs, also engaged in human sacrifice. Archaeological discoveries at the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent have revealed mass burials of individuals, often with their hands tied behind their backs, suggesting ritualistic execution. These sacrifices appear to have been associated with the dedication of the pyramid itself, a monumental offering to consecrate the sacred structure and imbue it with divine power.